Royteen.
From Everett to Eastlake, this is KIRO Radio, 97.3 FM. News and talk, powered by the Pacific Northwest.
The Dori Monson Show on KIRO Radio. This is The Big Lead.
Coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio and streaming on Facebook Live. Welcome to The Big Show. Lots of stuff to talk about today. Brock Heward's going to join me in less than 30 minutes to recap yesterday's Seahawks game and what Pete Carroll had to say in his first post-game interview this morning with Brock and Salk. So Brock will join us, the Money Monson quarterback, coming up at 12:30. Lots of news to get to. Let's get right into The Big Lead.
The Big Lead. Top story.
Well, that sure was a sad story you had in your newscast about the fire down in Kent.
I know.
7 horses.
7 horses.
And they
were
don't
trapped.
know the cause of that fire.
No.
So 7 horses trapped in a barn perished this morning down in Kent. And that's after these horrible fire stories this weekend here in Seattle. And we have no idea the cause of that horse barn fire down in Kent. But the old Elks building in Fremont, they are almost certain that was arson. And then the other story that Ursula mentioned, that massive fire at a warehouse down on the Ship Canal near Seattle Pacific. And we don't know yet definitively if that was arson. The owner of the lumber company that used that warehouse talked to KIRO 7 News.
I got the phone call last night, like, your sheds are completely engulfed, and it was like I couldn't process that information.
And they said that they clearly saw the fire start in this one shed that people had access to. And as I said, there was clearly an arson not that far away on the Ship Canal with that Elks Club this weekend. Witnesses said this was a massive blaze.
See the smoke, it was maybe 20 feet off from where our house was. So watching it all go over all of where everybody else lives, and then knowing that all of the students live right across the street, and hearing them having to evacuate, the power going out. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy.
And when it's a 4-alarm fire, that is indeed a massive blaze. And the guy who owns the lumber company, he said that they have, just real kiln-dried lumber. And so they're not that surprised that it went up in blazes and burned so hot.
I asked specifically, where did the fire start? They said they have picture evidence that was the one and only shed that was on fire when it first started. And it spread from there.
So was this arson? We're still waiting to get some definitive word.
You're talking kiln-dried lumber that's completely dry. We don't sell anything wet. So when it lights, it's 100 feet to the sky.
But the Elks Club, they've already determined was arson. This may have been, we don't know yet about this Kent thing. But we have seen just this increasing level of mentally deranged craziness on the streets of this whole region. As we've had so many blazes that have started in the homeless encampments that have, damaged our infrastructure around here, that all those propane tanks that homeless people had stolen underneath the Magnolia Bridge, that could have been a disaster. And we're just seeing things like this on and on and on all around the region. And all of this at a time when the crime is getting more and more out of control, and the cops are fleeing in droves. Let me get to the next story in our Big Lead.
The Big Lead. Big local.
So the Seattle Police still don't have a new contract, and that's because community groups are opposed to a contract that has been negotiated. The Guild and the chief stood up at a press conference weeks ago and said that we've agreed, and the mayor was there too. We finally have agreed to a contract after years of Seattle police officers not having a contract. And now it's on hold because we have a growing number of activists who just simply hate cops. And as I told you on Friday, this is not about police accountability. 940, the initiative that passed, is the most fundamentally anti-cop initiative that's ever been passed in this country. And the message that is going out loud and clear around here is that the controlling political forces of this region are simply fundamentally anti-cop. And so we don't know. The Seattle City Council is going to vote on this contract tomorrow. But we have many city council members, including the socialist who calls cops murderers when they're exonerated in shootings, who just simply don't like police officers. And why is that? Because they have been firmly on the side of anarchists in this region. And you can go all the way back to the May Day rioting of a couple of decades ago, when our city council, which was 1 billion times more reasonable back then, they still were opening city buildings and let's provide a warm place for the anarchists who are bussing in from around the region so that they have a place to sleep at night. And so even back then, when the city council wasn't nearly as crazed, they still were embracing anarchy and anarchists. And it was because then and now, the further left you go, the more anti-cop you get. And Seattle police officers know that. And so there is a crisis in Seattle police. As criminals more and more are taking over the streets, cops more and more are leaving in droves. And I'll tell you about a couple of emails and Facebook messages that I've gotten just in the last 24 hours. One from a listener who I really trust as a source. Dori, I was talking to my nephew, who's been a Seattle cop for years. He tells me that 80 Seattle police officers are quitting or retiring as soon as the new contract goes through because it's easier to wait than submit wage base retroactively after you retire. They owe him back pay around $40,000. There are apparently whole squads not showing up for work. And while I haven't been able to confirm this morning, I will tell you that my colleague Jason Rance on KTTH, he has also been communicating with a lot of cops, and he's got stories up on My Northwest about the crisis, the exodus in Seattle police, because very few people, not enough good people, want to work there. They got a lot of good people now, but they got a lot of openings where they need more good people. And then this one on Facebook from somebody who says they're a current SPD officer. I'm seeing very little reason to remain an officer with Seattle Police. This contract opposition from groups is mind-blowing. Until, that is, you remember that the CPC was not a permanent body until the city advanced the so-called accountability legislation. This called the community police organization to be permanent but not fully funded. And what do those members want? A way to foray their invented profession of naysaying police into a paid gig. And then he goes on and on and on. They talk about reform, but they fail to remember that we are in full and effective compliance with the Department of Justice. It's taken 4 years to get a contract. And he says, we are losing officers left and right. Bellevue offers a $16,000 signing bonus. Everett's offering a signing bonus. All pay as well or better. Now, I don't know if that's true. I think other surrounding departments do not pay quite as well as Seattle. But then he goes on to say something I know is true. Few have the stressors of SPD. So folks from 1 to 15 years on the job are leaving in droves. I don't blame them. I'm looking at leaving too. I was born in Seattle, raised here, graduated from Seattle Public Schools, live in the city currently, and hope to make this my home. But there comes a point where you just won't do it anymore because why bother? Would you be a Seattle police officer right now? And it's a fair question. And it is troubling when we have a growing political lack of leadership that wants to bring as many drug criminals as possible into the city. And as the cops are depolicing, either out of necessity because they don't have the staffing, or because it's their form of protest, or because they're afraid of what's going to happen from a paperwork standpoint if they do what used to be routine police work, this is becoming a real powder keg around here. And it's only going to make a difference, not only if you get rid of all 7 Seattle City Council members who are up for re-election next year, but you got to replace them with people more reasonable. Because these current leaders are taking us down an incredibly dangerous path. And the people of this region know it. So not only did we pass the most anti-cop initiative last week, but we also passed 1639, which is raising the gun buying age from 18 to 21 so you can serve our country and carry a gun in Iraq and Afghanistan when you're 18 and 19, but you can't in Washington State or won't be able to once this is implemented. You can have a gun, lock it in your house, have your house be broken into, somebody steals your gun, uses it in a crime, and you can be criminally prosecuted. It is just a fundamentally anti-self-defense initiative. And so, ironically, gun shops all around here, they are expecting between now and the first of the year, when this initiative will be implemented, they think there will be record gun sales. Because there are a lot of people, I should get a gun. I've been thinking about getting a gun. And now they're all saying, I got to get a gun before this initiative goes in. And so we're going to see, or at least they are anticipating, a huge spike. Concerned citizens at one gun shop talked to Q13 News.
I'm concerned at not being able to access my gun when I need it.
You're not going to tell the criminal, can you hold on a moment, because we have a law that I have to, safely store it in the garage somewhere and so can you hold on a moment? I'm going to go take it and I'm going to defend myself, then we'll talk.
You call the police or things go down, it's less than 1 minute. So those seconds count.
And some people were talking about the irony that I mentioned of 18 and 19-year-olds can go fight in Iraq and Afghanistan, but they can't have self-defense here in our state?
Ask them to die for our country, volunteer for our military, and yet they can't buy booze, they cannot buy, now in this case, a modern sporting rifle.
So the people who just wanted to push an anti-self-defense initiative now might see more guns out there than ever before.
I am being liable, not the criminal. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
The language of the initiative is too vague.
So that's what they all told Q13. So expect a massive spike in gun sales because people realize, well, if crime's getting worse and policing is getting more scarce, I better have a gun to protect myself and my family. Next up in the big lead.
The Big Lead, top trending.
Meanwhile, where's our governor when all of this is going on? Jay Inslee. When you see what's happening in your state, when you see a police crisis, when you see crime spikes, when you see drug addiction everywhere, when you see the homelessness skyrocket, the drug vagrants are coming here from other states committing rapes and murders. I'll tell you later this afternoon about the illegal who was free because of sanctuary status elsewhere in the country who murdered 3 people a couple of days ago. Yeah, sanctuary's working out real well there and here. So according to the Seattle Times, Jay Inslee is now going to give some thought to running for president of the United States in 2020. They asked him if he is going to pursue the presidency, and his quote to the Times, "We will give some thought to that in the near future. I have not ruled that out, as you know." Jay Inslee believes that he could be president of the United States. And let's face it, a lot of people believe that. Big story, Wall Street Journal today. Hillary Clinton's former advisor, Mark Penn, says that he is relatively certain that Hillary will run for president again in 2020.
The parlor game of who's going to be the 2020 nominee begins today. And I think don't underestimate Hillary's positioning to run again. She's got a 75% approval among Democrats. She's positioned herself with the core of the Democratic base. A lot of Democrats think she was unfairly denied winning the last presidential race, and I think she's going to sit back.
What does that mean? She was unfairly denied winning the last presidential race. Why? Because we have an electoral college? So suddenly enforcing electoral laws or election laws in America is unfair if your side loses? What a bizarre statement. She was unfairly denied because she lost in the category that decides who's president. Only somebody like that.
See how this develops. You've already seen what happened when some of the potential nominees stood up at the Kavanaugh hearing and they looked like amateurs. She's a pro and she learns, and Clintons never stop until they get where they want to go. And I say don't count her out. And if she gets in, she will be quite formidable.
Yeah, Clintons never stop before they go where they want to go, even if it's inside a blue dress. Oh, and Howard Schultz, the Starbucks CEO, he has assembled, CNBC is reporting that he has assembled an elite PR team as Howard Schultz considers running for president. He's going to prepare to release a civic-minded new book. He's considering running for president. Hey, if you'd kept the Sonics in Seattle, maybe you'd have a better chance of carrying your home city, Howard. But Howard Schultz could be the next business leader, and that one's been rumored and bandied about for a long time. But now there are signs over the weekend that Schultz is assembling a team so that he could be president. So you got Inslee wants to be president, Howard Schultz, Hillary Clinton. By the way, in an exclusive interview, when I found out that Hillary is thinking about running again, I talked to the late Adrian Balboa, the wife of boxer Rocky Balboa, to see if she would have any advice for Hillary versus Trump if Hillary enters the 2020 race.
Before, there were reasons to fight I could understand, but I don't understand this. Even if you win, what have you won? Apollo's still gone. Why can't you change your thinking? Everybody else does.
Because I'm a fighter. That's the way I'm made, Adrian. That's what you married. We can't change what we are.
Yes, you can.
We can't change anything, Adrian. All we can do is just go with what we are.
You can't go with what you are. Have you read the papers? Do you know what everybody says? It's suicide. You've seen him. You know how strong he is. You can't win!
No, she can't. That's good advice for Hillary. And there is one Democrat who's jumped in the race now. He's a state senator in West Virginia, Richard Ojeda. He just lost he was running for Congress in West Virginia. So he loses for Congress in his home state, but he this morning announced that he is the first announced Democratic 2020 presidential candidate. And Donald Trump, what do you think about Richard Ojeda?
She is running against a total whack.
This is when he was running for the congressional seat, and Trump went to West Virginia to campaign for his Republican opponent. But here's what Trump said about the first announced Democratic presidential candidate.
She is running against a total wacko. Now I've seen this person, and you can't have that person in Congress. That person is stone cold crazy.
So that's what Trump thinks about, in all seriousness, the first announced Democratic candidate, and that is your big lead.
The Big Lead on KIRO Radio.
Oh, another tough one yesterday for your Seattle Seahawks. Brock Heward, the Monday Monson quarterback, he's going to drop in next. Tell you what Pete Carroll said about yesterday's game when he talked to him this morning. That's next on the Dori Monson Show.